Where's Zach?
Maybe we couldn't wait to get out of there.
Yeah.
Actually, you don't even have to be there. I saw Greg Nybert talking about those new rules. Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. We'll call this Village of Ruidoso special meeting to order. If we could, we'd have a moment of silence, and then we will have the Pledge of Allegiance, excuse me, and the salute to the New Mexico flag. Stand with me. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, the symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures. All righty. I want to thank everyone for joining with us this morning. We have a short agenda. We'll get through this pretty quick. I know we had a long evening. Somebody was a little hot-winded, long-winded last night. But anyway, I appreciate everything that's going on. Ron, will you do roll call, please?
Good morning, everyone. Mayor Crawford.
Here.
Councilor Salas.
Here.
Councilor Letterman.
Here.
Councilor Cornelius.
Here.
Councilor Coughlin.
Here.
And Mayor, we have Councilor Eby and Councilor Jackson will be joining us soon.
Soon? Okay.
But we
very
do
good.
have a quorum.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
It took me a little longer to get in this morning. So there's no hurry, gentlemen. Just take your time. And I want to applaud the streets department, Josh and those guys, for the wonderful work they're doing on the beautiful, wonderful snow that we got this morning. And so I've already gotten a lot of phone calls this morning, people appreciating the hard work that our streets department, and it's nice to see some of that beautiful new equipment that we've purchased in action. All right, agenda items. We'll have 3 today. We'll start with number 1 is ratification of a no-cost change order number 2 with Roper Construction for the Close Road Bridge Project, FEMA PW 94.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. This no-cost change order before you today is for the repair and/or replacement of the failed gabions and other areas of existing gabions that may be at risk of failure. It also includes the repair work of the 3 failed pavement areas on Close Road Bridge. So this work has begun. They started mobilization yesterday. The work is anticipated to take 4 to 6 weeks with a completion date of March 8th, 2021. And I will stand for questions, and we have Adam on as well if you have any further questions.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions of Karen or Adam? I think we've discussed this pretty good, and we went ahead and made a move to go ahead and get it worked, take care of the window. So if I can get a motion.
It's a change order that Tim will like.
Yeah, Tim was all over this one. Coughlin was behind this 100%.
Yeah, 100%. Mayor, I'll go ahead and make a motion. I'll move to ratification of a no-cost change order number 2 with Roper Construction for the Close Road Bridge Project number FEMA-PW 94.
Second.
Okay, we have motion and second. Any discussion? Roll call, please, Ron.
Councilor Coughlin.
Aye.
Councilor Cornelius.
Aye.
Councilor Salas.
Aye.
Councilor Letterman.
Aye.
Okay. Item number 2 is discussion and possible action on adoption of Resolution 2021-04, a resolution amending the fiscal year 2021 budget quarter ending December 31st, 2020 for certain funds and application to the Local Government Division, LGD, of the New Mexico Department of Finance and Administration, DFA, for approval thereof. Judy? Or is this Karen too?
No, I'm here.
Okay, Judy.
This is Resolution 21-4. This is the second budget adjustment of fiscal year 2021, and it encompasses all budget increases and decreases from ending December 31st, 2020. The total amount of all funds together of the increase is $7,729,419. Each fund has an individual increase or decrease, and that's what we'll be searching or be focusing on today, is the worksheet that says Department of Finance and Administration, Local Government Division, Financial Management Bureau, Schedule of Budget Adjustments. And I believe they're going to be sharing it on the screen there with you. And it's also in your packets.
Okay. And this was reviewed by the internal
IFC.
finance? Yes,
On Friday, yes.
yes. And was approved. Do we have any questions of Judy?
I do, Mayor.
Yes, sir, go right ahead.
Judy, on the increase for the, well, there's two of them, the special recreation, special revenue budget on the agenda memo, it was increased to 138. I haven't pulled the recap up yet. But are all these increases due to the cuts that we did? Or is, I think if I understood you right, these are carryovers. Is that correct?
Councilor Salas and Mayor, the actual adjustment to the Special Recreation Fund was an act of adjusting actual revenues up to what they actually came in, and then it allocated those revenues over expenses to the split of revenues between watershed and Parks and Rec. So that's why there was an increase to expenditures, because it was following the split at the end of the season. So when you look at the increases, we actually removed unused budget from the WIBIT and shifted it to the split between Parks and Watershed. So Parks got, let me check the amount, off of the split, 131,000, and I believe the Watershed got 52,000 based on the 70-30 split.
Okay. And then my second question is on SGRT, the doubling the amount for the administration fees.
Yes, sir. As you know, when we had set the budget for 21, we had cut back all the revenues.
Right.
However, some of our funds are performing extremely well and therefore have met their budget of revenues. And so when we're doing our admin fees on a quarterly basis, actual revenues, which is the basis of the admin fee, which is usually 10% to a fund, when we were calculating the amount of admin fees, we noticed that since the revenues are coming in over budgeted amounts, the admin fees then in turn will be over budget based on actuals. Therefore, when I went to do the transfer in the second quarter, we had to increase the admin fee because revenues were just coming in higher than budget. Now, that's just an estimate. It's just a budget amount. Actual admin fees are paid based on actual revenues coming in. I just needed some kind of increase to the expense so that I wouldn't overdraw the fund.
Is that about equal to last year's budget amount?
This one, I believe it's comparable, but I will double check for you. I didn't look at it in terms of annual year-to-year comparison. I just kind of figured out just a guess of what it could be for the year. But I will definitely check that out and get back to you.
Okay, thank you, Judy. That's all my
Sure.
questions, Mayor.
Okay. All right? Are
Also
there,
in this budget adjustment, you'll see the issuance of the debt from the Series 2020 GEO bonds, which is gathered in our fund number 499, and you'll also see the issuance of the NMFA loan for the magistrate court in Fund 450. If you would like, I can go fund by fund on all the adjustments.
I don't need it.
okay, I think we're good.
Okay,
Judy, I think that they've been able to review it enough, and then with the IFC, does anyone else have any additional questions?
Mayor Crawford,
Yes, sir.
there was a couple of issues in IFC that we pointed out that, when we talked about land acquisition, things of that nature, so if she could maybe cover those highlights.
Okay, did you hear that, Judy?
I thought I heard something about the questions on some of the issues in IFC
On
that,
the land acquisitions?
yes, I can go over those.
Okay.
Within if you look at the.
Turn on your mic.
I can't tell if it's red or green.
Oh, it's red. We were talking to Tim about turning his microphone on. Okay, go ahead, Judy.
Okay, if you look on the general fund, which is towards the top, and if you look at the transfers out, you'll see that there's a transfer to the general capital improvement fund for the purchase of the Alto Lake property and rehab. The lake purchase was $330,000, and we had set aside another $170,000 for the rehab of the property. So that was brought up in the IFC. And you'll also see it not only coming out of the general fund, but later down in the spreadsheet on the general capital improvement fund, you'll actually see it coming into that fund. And other than that, I don't recall any issues at IFC unless you recall another one, Tim?
We also had a discussion on the Meacham property, and then, what we had said inside on the reserve.
So, oh yes, back when we purchased the Meacham property, we had set aside the money for the purchase. However, I could not recall if there was a discussion about the rehab of the property. So at this point, there is no money to rehab the property. And I believe Village Manager Dodge had thought he had heard that we were supposed to set aside another $700,000 for the rehab. Although I don't currently have it in the budget, there's enough room within contingency and cash balance to record it in the budget if we need to.
Okay, do we have any questions on that? On what we would like to do? Manager Dodge, do you have any suggestions?
Just, my point was just more for clarity so that we're all aware of where the funds are at. And, because there's been so many variances, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't remember setting aside money for rehab because I don't know that we finally decided exactly what to do. That property has a couple of different potentials, and I don't know that we decided on anything.
I think you're right.
Okay, any other further questions? I know that we'll have to cross that bridge soon. Okay, so with that being said, can we get a motion for accepting Resolution 2021?
I move that we accept Resolution 2021-04, a resolution amending the fiscal year 2021 budget quarter ending December 31st, 2020 for certain funds and application to the Local Government Division, LGD, of the New Mexico Department of Finance and Administration, DFA, for approval thereof.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Any last discussion? None? Roll call, please, Ron.
Counselor Lutterman,
Aye.
Counselor Coughlin,
Aye.
Counselor Cornelius,
Aye.
Counselor Salas.
Aye.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you, folks. Item number 3 is discussion and possible action on adoption of Resolution 2021-05, adopting the Village of Ruidoso Asset Management Plan. Mr. Boyda.
Mayor Crawford, councilors, thank you for allowing me to put this on the special agenda. Today we've got the Water and Wastewater Asset Management Plan. We sent a draft along with this agenda, but I apologize, in the late afternoon, we sent out an updated draft. And Heather will talk about kind of some of those changes when she starts presenting. We've been working on asset management for a long time. I think we were already working on asset management when I came here 5 years ago. And just through a kind of a series of unfortunate events, we've just finally ended up wrapping up an asset management plan. One of the issues with this most recent iteration or attempt for asset management plan was we secured planning funding through the DFA to help with this, but the funds were distributed through NMED, and NMED was contracting with the Southwest Environmental Finance Center directly. But unfortunately, they had a memorandum of understanding that expired, and they prepared one, and then the state decided that they needed a memorandum of agreement. And so in the process of redrafting that, COVID-19 happened, and then the state put the brakes on processing new contracts that were not COVID related. And so that process kind of got lost in the weeds. And so because of our current efforts to apply for more grant funding, there's a ever increasing need for us to have an asset management plan done. So we just contracted directly with the Southwest Environmental Finance Center. And because of our current application out to the Water Trust Board for the Brown and Faultwell rehabilitation projects, we need to have an asset management plan approved by you guys by the 29th. And so approval of this is going to allow us to move forward with the readiness application for the Water Trust Board. And right now we're ranked number 2 in the state for the storage and conveyance projects. So it's likely that will be funded with legislative approval. And that will get us about $500,000 for water projects. And so I was going to turn this over to Heather Himmelberger. She's the director for the Southwest Environmental Finance Center. She'll give just kind of a brief overview of asset management, and then we'll have a Q&A afterward.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you, Mayor and City Councilors, for having me today. I just wanted to give you a really brief explanation of who the Southwest Environmental Finance Center is. So we were started in 1992 by EPA, and our name was created by them. So I apologize that the name is kind of strange, but we're a public service arm of the University of New Mexico. We're located within the Civil Engineering Department and the Center for Water and Environment with UNM School of Engineering. And the University of New Mexico has a 3-part mission: education, research, and public service, and we fit that public service arm. So all of our work, 100% of it, is out and about in the community, assisting state, local, and tribal governments, as well as the wider regulated community with a wide array of water and wastewater needs. But our particular focuses are on compliance, technical, managerial, and financial capacity building, asset management, and water loss. And we have worked in asset management, and me personally, for over 17 years now, and that's about the time at which asset management was coming to the United States from Australia and New Zealand. Excuse me. And I've delivered literally hundreds of trainings and assisted communities of all different sizes with implementing asset management. And we also work all over the United States. So even though we're located here in New Mexico, our service area is pretty much the entire US. And I've personally been to all 50 states multiple times each and all of the U.S. territories, and have worked in one way or another in water and wastewater in all of those places. So we have a staff of about 11 who are dedicated to helping communities however we can. And we try to offer as neutral assistance as we can, meaning we try to help people make the best decisions for themselves. And we don't have any stake in the outcome of the decisions. So we're not like an engineering firm or any group like that where the outcome of the decision might impact what we do later. So we really try our best to help anybody the best way we can. So in this particular case, when we were working with Ruidoso, Eric described a lot of the issues we had in trying to work through NMED. And so unfortunately, we didn't get started with the plan until very late in the game. I think it was towards the end of November, beginning of December. So this process has actually moved fairly quickly at the end stages here of creating this plan. And what we were trying to do is sort of document where Ruidoso is right now in the status of its asset management program. So asset management is defined as providing the desired level of service. So it's what you want your assets to provide your community at the lowest life cycle cost. So it's really about spending your limited dollars in the best way you can to have the best outcome with the funds that you have. And it can be extremely effective. Just as one real quick example, we worked with the Albuquerque Authority for a number of years, and without changing how they spend their money on pipe, small diameter pipe repair, but changing how they spent it and how they prioritized pipe replacement, in a 5-year period, they dropped the break rate by 45%. So it can be really, really effective if you can look holistically at what you're doing and how you're spending your money. And I have no doubt that the Village of Ruidoso, has and will continue to experience benefits from going down this path. So asset management is considered more of a journey than a destination. It's not a place you're trying to get to. It isn't the type of thing where eventually you can say, okay, I'm done with asset management, check that box. It's really about how you continuously manage your assets, how you look at them, how you make decisions about them. And so it is something that, is continuously going to be practiced throughout the village. And the implementation did start a while ago. It's not like the village hasn't been doing anything and now all of a sudden they're doing something. It's just about sort of changing the mindset and changing how you think about the assets. Because asset management is really a strategic business process and a way of thinking. It's not about just, buying a technology and implementing that. It's really about thinking differently and structuring how you think about your assets. So the plan itself that we have before you today is really just a snapshot in time that describes what the Village of Ruidoso is doing in its asset management program. We're describing the various activities that are being done now, as well as those that are planned for the future. Because again, if this is a journey and not a destination, we really have things to continue to improve over time. And that's kind of the practice of asset management is always like that. I like to think of it as more like a spring, and you learn by doing, and as you do it, you move up and up and up. So you're always continuously learning, continuously adjusting. So where you are now is not where you're going to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So the plan will need to be updated probably every 5 to 10 years to kind of just move you forward and continue you into the future. So let's talk a little bit about the elements of the plan. So the first, there are 5 elements to asset management, and it's the current state of the assets, which addresses the question, what assets do you have? Level of service, which answers the question, what do you want those assets to do? Criticality, which answers the question of which assets are most critical to having sustained performance over time. Life cycle costing, which looks at the entire life cycle of the asset and how you want to run it from the time you're first considering putting in an asset all the way through operation, maintenance, repair, replacement, and eventual disposal of the asset. And then long-term funding, how are you going to fund the assets over that time period to ensure that they can do their job? And then we have a section on human elements, because we don't want to forget that the employees, the staff, the people who run the facility are really, really important. They're not assets per se, but they're, in the sense of how we think of assets, but they're super, super important in being able to implement, anything you want to do in the water and wastewater services that you provide. So in the current state of the assets, in a second, I'll just turn it over to Ashley to talk a little bit about what's being done. But this is where you create an inventory of all the assets that you have. And in the village, there are two places where inventory information resides. One is the Esri ArcGIS system that the village has, and the other is a CityWorks system. And CityWorks is an asset management add-on where it sits on top of the Esri ArcGIS system and allows you to interact with the information in a little bit easier way and a more comprehensive way. It allows you to do work orders and make dashboards around the work orders and kind of keep track of what's going on. And very recently, there's been a lot of work that's been done on the GIS system. And I think Ashley is going to talk a little bit about what's been done recently.
Mayor, members of the council, I'm Ashley Carbajal. I'm the water resource specialist for the village. I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay, so we're kind of taking multiple approaches to rectifying our geodatabase. And one of the approaches is training the staff using Art Collector and going out and GPSing the assets and putting them back into our geodatabase to correct the lines. Another thing that we're doing is we hired, or part of the Southwest Environmental Finance Center, we worked with Luke and he geo-referenced a lot of our old maps that were back in our map room. And so I just kind of want to show you over here on the right-hand side, you can see a list of all the maps he's done. He's done quite a bit. And these are representing, they can go from as-builds to hand drawings, just different areas. And so I kind of want to show you one particular map. So this purple line right now is our sewer line that we have on the map. And then this, the map itself is showing where the sewer line is supposed to be. And I apologize for the map being a little bit dark, so it might be a little difficult to see the line. But as you zoom in, you can kind of see the discrepancy between the two lines and why we're needing to get all these maps georeferenced, why we're needing to go out in the field and fix the location of our assets. Because if we don't, it makes it very difficult for the water and sewer crews to be able to pinpoint exactly where their lines are without having to, or I should say, that like during snow events like that we have right now, if there's a line break, it's a lot easier for them to pull up a map on their tablets that they have and say, yeah, the line's in this general vicinity, and then actually have it be across the road, or have the line showing it's out in the middle of this field. So I just kind of wanted to show you one particular set of maps, and you can kind of see where the line is different from the one actually on the road where it's supposed to be.
And some of these discrepancies are that the data was collected, 20 years ago with different technology, and at that point, having a line that close was reasonable. But now we have better GPS units that we've purchased that can get within 1.5 foot accuracy, that can help our staff actually be able to better pinpoint these underground utilities.
And one thing to note about asset inventories is nobody's asset inventory, no matter how long you do asset management, is ever 100% perfect. So what you're trying to do is, again, that continual improvement process. So what data do I have now, and how can I improve that data going forward? So putting that process in place, as Ashley described, working with employees to go collect point information when you can actually see the assets, such as a manhole cover or a valve or a hydrant or a meter, things like that. When they're visible, you can take a GPS point and locate it very well and sort of field verify the data in the GIS system. And for cases like this, a sewer line where it's underground and you can't see it, you just do the best you can initially with the original data. Now this is an improvement to put these georeferenced as-built and other kinds of drawings that you had. It'll improve your data. And then as you continue to do work and you're doing CCTVing of the sewers, or you're doing repairs on the water lines, you can always take additional points to, again, pinpoint and verify and improve the asset inventory, as well as collecting data about the assets. So particular attributes, size, material, manufacturers, those types of things. So over time, you can continuously improve the asset inventory. And that's the case for any system who's working on this. No matter how long you've been doing asset management, there's always improvements that can be made because there are so many assets. And, again, many of them are underground. You can't see them. So it is, again, that continuous improvement process of always looking for ways to get the data better, get more information. The village has also started a really good practice of asking contractors who's ever working on new assets for the village to provide that information in a way that it can be added to the asset inventory. So going forward, that's also going to be a big help in increasing the asset inventory process. So moving on to the next step, which is level of service. Level of service is setting goals for what you want your assets to do. So there are two overarching mission statements for the village, one for water and one for wastewater, and that kind of sets the general direction of, puts everybody on the same page of what you want the water and wastewater system to do. And then there were two resolutions that were passed. I believe one was in May and one was in June of 2020 that set individual level of service goals for the water department and the wastewater department to set what you want the assets to provide. And then that gives you metrics you can track over time to see how well you're doing. In the criticality phase or component of asset management, we want to look at which assets are most critical. So we look at the probability that the asset will fail as well as the consequence if it does. So how bad would it be if this particular asset failed? And the village has gone through a really extensive process of looking at water assets. The wastewater ones will come next, but really going through which assets in each section of the water utility could be critical, and then what kinds of threats might affect those assets. And originally in the plan that you got the first go around last Thursday, the criticality was not completely specified. So that is one change that was made to the version you got last night, is there was way more explanation of how the criticality was completed. But it was a very thorough analysis of looking at each asset and what the various threats to those assets might be and how bad it would be if those assets failed. In the life cycle costing portion, again, we're looking at the whole life cycle of that asset, from planning, design, construction, into operation, maintenance, repair, replacement, and then eventual disposal of the asset. And this is where we talk about there's sort of an intersection at this point between managing assets and asset management. So asset management is a strategic process that looks at all of the assets, and managing assets is the individual things you do to an asset. And life cycle costing, they kind of come together because you have to do both. You have to manage individual assets, but you also have to look at the overall collection of assets and what you want them to do. So one of the big activities in life cycle costing is really that work order system that the CityWorks software gives the village. So it allows the village to look at what's happening, provides dashboards, how many open work orders, how many work orders need to be completed, how many have been completed. And the more and more you use that, the more data you get to look at individual assets and how they're performing, when changes need to be made as you're going forward. Like one example was there's some vertical turbine pumps that were replaced recently with some submersible pumps, which work better and have greater energy efficiency. So you can look for those opportunities. The more data you have on individual assets, you can look for opportunities for improvement in the future when you replace assets. And in the long-term funding area, that's where we look at how the utility is funded. And in both water and wastewater, the primary way of getting money is through customers, so rates. There are water rates, sewer rates, and wastewater rates within the village of Ruidoso. And that is, again, a primary source of day-to-day funding. And the village also has the benefit of that supplemental gross receipts funding. And that's really a good thing. Many communities, you know, across New Mexico don't have that additional funding. So that helps add to the water funding and give some additional funding beyond just the rate revenue. And then if you're doing a capital project, you are able to access outside funding sources such as the state revolving fund, the community development block grant, the legislative funding. There's a whole bunch of other sources of funding that can be tapped into to do capital projects. The village has a really good budgeting process as well that works with the folks in the water and wastewater areas to make sure that they get the funding they need to operate their utilities. And, you know, compared to other utilities, I really feel like there's a great deal of coordination between the departments and the finance portion of the village, and that seems to be working very well. In terms of the human elements, there is good staffing. You have highly certified operators, very good retention. Not to say that there can't always be more staff, but there's good retention of the people that you do have here. There's a lot of long-term employees. And additionally, there's support to move employees up and get them certified. You want to, you know, continue that as much as possible. So just real quick, I'll tell you a little bit about the changes that were made from the plan. Again, the plan was written as quicker than we might have liked. We didn't have as much time as we would like. Normally, we're looking at 6 months to 2 years to put a plan in place, and this was done in less than 2 months. And then unfortunately, Christmas break was in there, and we had to work around the fact that, you know, we have a pandemic and everything had to be done remotely. So I apologize that we were not able to provide you a more fully complete edited version of the plan last Thursday. But we have done some edits and completed the plan, and the one that you received last night should be, you know, a full, complete plan. And the changes were that we added an executive summary. We added a brief next step section. We expanded the current state of the assets, expanded the criticality section because that section was not complete, and then did the thorough edit. So with that, unless Eric has anything to add, we can open it up to any questions anybody might have.
Does anyone have any questions?
Yes, Eric, Mayor, I just clarification and maybe helping out. First thing is that we should number the pages, because as I was going through the email version, I didn't see numbers how I could reference. But I guess, Tim, I'll be asking you on figure 8, your chart. It lists everybody on there and stuff, but classification, do we still pay for double certification? In other words, water production and wastewater treatment. If someone has both certifications, level 4 or level 3 or any of that.
I believe that just depends on the job that they're in and what's required.
Okay? Okay, because looking at the ranges on that org chart, I just brought up question of, and they only list level 4 water, I'm assuming, because it's under the water production. And I knew at one time, we had double 4s and double 3s, and that was to help just cross-reference or fill in when needed, because we were hurting for operators at both places. And first of all, Eric, staff, this is an excellent report. I did read most of it. The first one sent out, probably about half of it, and then I started reading your email one too. I couldn't even tell the difference of what was changed as I skimmed through it there. But one, just a comment there is that we need to add more definitions of acronyms. And then on figure 10, what year budget were those numbers from? So the acronyms are in Appendix B, number 10. There's like 3 of them listed, but like the NPDES, I don't see reference, but where you put capital improvement plan, then you give the acronym for it after. Even the TMDL, I thought that was Tomas Montoya's driver's license, and then the EPA. And I'm just talking, for layman's terms, and because that's all I could speak and read. It'll help me out a lot.
Councilor Salas, with the approval of this resolution, we'll make those edits and resend out with the page numbers, and we'll add in a front end table with the abbreviations defined.
And I appreciate, and I know this is a living document. Like you said, you'll add the pages, and those are all things there, but it is an excellent document, and it's moving us forward. So I think that was most of it.
Mayor Crawford and Councilor Salas, I would like to add that part of the thing that helped Heather and I put this document together in such a short order was just all of the existing documents that the village has. If you notice, we were able to reference a bunch of charts that Judy Starkovich puts out in her financial reports. Our efforts with the strategic planning session made it easy for me to copy and paste org charts. The workforce housing plan, we referenced a lot of these documents, and it really saved us a lot of time having that information available.
Yes, I recognize some of those events, those documents as well as information. Because I know at one time we had an estimate of how many pipes of water line we have in the village. I think that was in the Gatsby 34 inventory way back then when I was in Ding, and man, I couldn't, it was hundreds of miles, I knew that, but this is all really good. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion unless anyone else has something.
I'd like for you to make it.
I got a couple of things. Yeah, so Eric, looking through the amendment history, I saw that the original review date was back in 2018. And I kind of remember back then, one of the things is in our, and this isn't necessarily for you, but in our agenda memo, this is referred to as the Village of Ruidoso Asset Management Plan. Although the reality is this is strictly water and wastewater. I remember making mention way back then that I would like to see some sort of asset management plan village-wide, and that would help prevent us from getting into a situation like we had last year with the street department having just some horrible equipment that nobody knew about. I think we should be looking at all of our assets throughout the entire village, but I understand this is regarding, we need this to get some funding, and that's why this is here. The other thing is, looking at this plan, I noticed that many of the figures in the beginning part are all referenced from 2018. And your next scheduled review is scheduled for June 29th of 21. at that point, when you do your review, I would like to see some more current numbers. For instance, we've got unemployment rates and household income. And since 2018, I know we've had a couple of minimum wage increases, so that would definitely change household income. But I'd like to see that updated the next time you guys do a review.
Sure. So Mayor Crawford, Councilor Coughlin, I do think that there's a little bit of confusion. So in the appendices, we have 2 attached SOPs. Appendix A is a SOP that was created by the Southwest Environmental Finance Center, and Appendix B is an internal SOP that Ashley Carvajal has created, and it's about the procedure for creating unique identifiers. So this gives us that unique code number for each asset. And so that review schedule for the June of this year is for the SOP only. But I do think that this is something that we can look at updating the figures with current information as it's produced in other reports. So I will get these updated with new figures when they're available.
I appreciate
And
it.
I'll just, sorry, Counselor, I was just going to add that, again, I want to thank Judy and her staff because their reports are a treasure trove of information and very, very impressive of how detailed and thorough, and it was just a wonderful source of information. And so I think because we were using the most recent budget, the figures end up being a little bit behind because I believe the budget was, it's about a year behind by the time we're using it. So when the next budget comes out and these figures are updated, they can be put in the asset management plan. But we were using the figures that were available to us, which went up through 2018 and the most recent budget. So we'll put the date on that one figure as was mentioned before, which was the most recent budget that we had. But again, I just want to thank Judy and her staff. They did a great job in putting these reports together, and, compared to other reports that we read, very impressive. So I think, again, we are really appreciative that that information was available for us to use.
Any other questions, comments?
Mayor, I would just like to say thank you to Eric and Heather and Ashley for all the hard work. This was a great document. Thank you very much.
I agree.
And I'd like to extend some kudos to everyone else that participated in the asset management process when it was struggling, Ron Senna and Lori Carpenter and Brad Dijek when he was still here. We're all real instrumental in trying to help push the village towards developing this asset management strategy.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks to all.
Okay, we had a motion started. If there's no more discussion. Rafa, would you like to continue?
Sure. Mayor, I move for the adoption of Resolution 2021-05, adopting the Village of Ruidoso Asset Management Plan.
Second.
Okay, no further discussion. Roll call, please, Ron.
Counselor Salas,
Aye.
Counselor Letterman,
Aye.
Counselor Cornelius,
Aye.
Counselor Coughlin.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ron. I believe that concludes our business for the Village of Ruidoso special meeting this morning. Does anyone have any last comments before we get started on our strategic planning? I call this meeting adjourned. I think somebody needs to go buy some burritos.
Do we have water?
We have water?